Real stories of werewolves, of Dogman history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
Before our episode about the son of Dogman, may we present this new song from our Scary Stories NYC Halloweentime Orchestra album. This one features Chibi Twins, stars of their own albums and videos, singing the title track. Find more info in the description if you're interested, and take it away, ladies.
He's small, but he's scary. Too short, but he's handsome. He's small, but he's large. Dogman Jr. in charge. Yo, Dogman Pop. Hey, yo, what's up? Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be a yuppie. Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be a yuppie. Yo, Dogman Pop. Hey, yo, what's up? Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be a yuppie. Yo, Dogman Pup. Hey, yo, what's up? Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be a yuppie. Yo, Dogman Pup. Yo, Dogman Pup. Hey, yo, what's up? Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be a yuppie. Yo, Dogman Pup. Hey, yo, what's up? Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be a yuppie. Yo, Dogman Pup. Hey, yo, what's up? Hey, Dogman Puppy. Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be a yuppie. Don't grow and puppy. Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up. Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be a yuppie. Don't grow and puppy. Don't grow lucky. Don't grow up, puppy. Woo! You Dogman Pup. Hey, yo, what's up? Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be yuppie. You Dogman Pup. Hey, yo, what's up? Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be yuppie. Yuppie. Young Dogman Puppy. Young grow up puppy. Yuppie. Hey, Dogman Puppy. Don't grow up to be a yuppie.
Son of Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a Dogman story that is also sort of a son of Dogman story and a werewolf pack narrative as well. It's really a bunch of different short sightings for the most part, but to us, it pieces together as part of one longer story. By us, I mean the surviving members of my family and myself, the people who lived through these occurrences. My husband's nickname in our family is Mav. It's short for Maverick, which is how I see him. I don't think I need to give you anyone else's name, though. I can mainly tell this from the point of view of me and Mav. Okay, so when Mav and I got married, we were both seniors in the local college. My parents had always rented out our basement as an apartment, and when a vacancy happened soon after our marriage, I found myself living back in my parents' basement pretty soon after I had moved out. Only now, my husband and I were paying to live there. At any rate, this house is kind of the real star of the story, or co-star with the Dogman. It's located near Judah Lake in Michigan. It's really a fairly typical suburban home, but it is located at the end of the block, and in the 70s through the turn of the century, we did get strange animals traipsing through our backyard, going to and from the lake. I mean, weird little four-legged furry critters for the most part, and strange birds that seem to have flown here from the Everglades by accident. We still refer to that backyard as Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, which was the name of an old TV show about animals. I still never feel comfortable when I take the shortcut through those trees to get to a local establishment that I frequent. I won't make the trip by myself at night anymore, even though we literally haven't seen those creatures since the later half of the 1990s. Mav and I are owners of the house now, and we live upstairs, but this all started one early morning before dawn, when it was just about to get light. As Mav looked out the basement windows in the back, which are set just above the ground level, what he saw was 2 dog feet But since there were a lot of stray dogs around back then, noticing them passing through the yard was not a big deal. The thing was, Mav only saw 2 dog feet, not 4. When I caught his confused expression, I walked closer to the window and I got myself a full-on view, looking up at a real 1970s Michigan Dogman. This was a big one, too, and definitely male. Its fur was sleek, and its muscle-bound body was accented in the dark night. I gasped in horror and surprise, but I did not back away. Instead, as the creature walked on its hind legs through the yard past us, I walked even closer to the window in order to study it as it left. I remember at the time calling him Super Anubis, only neither of us knew how to pronounce Anubis in those days, so we said the name wrong. But he looked like a steroided-out version of the Egyptian jackal-headed god. My family upstairs continued seeing this creature for a while, although generally they were at a distance and the sightings were very brief. Mav and I were walking home on that path through the woods behind us one evening, and we got close enough to the creature to get both that wet dog smell, if you know what I mean. He smelled like backstage at the circus, which I guess is another reference only older people will get. I guess this was also a very brief encounter now that I think about it, but it was at close enough a range, and it frightened both of us so badly that it's a big story to us. We saw the creature trot out onto the path on 2 legs in front of where we were walking, and then it turned and looked at us with a mysterious expression on its face. We both felt in fear of our lives there in the presence of this beast man. He stood taller than Mav, and Mav is 6'4". The creature might have been 7 feet, I suppose, possibly even a bit more. He did not seem to be a hippie in a costume, as my father suggested at the time, unless he was the tallest hippie in all of hippie history. The creature stared at us and we stared back. It felt like it lasted 2 or 3 weeks. Us all frozen in place, looking at each other. I remember imagining all different ways this could turn out, but none of them were good results. I think I expected something horrible was about to happen, and that's why I still have nightmares about meeting the Big Daddy Anubis Dogman that evening. But in fact, he just unfroze at some point and darted off into the dark forest out of our sight. Did we run home afterward? Well, we probably would have, but we found it hard just to put one foot in front of the other. That's how scared we were. That was the last time my husband and I saw the creature, but he was seen off and on from a distance by my family and our neighbors, on through the later 1980s. I guess the group of us were seeing him for about 8 or 9 years straight, but then that all stopped for a while. The sightings of the big Anubis trailed off for years, so that we didn't even really notice that they had stopped until the 1990s, when a second and different wave of encounters began taking place. We had heard from a neighbor who went away for a long weekend that when they got back, their house had been broken into, and their pantry raided by some very hungry and messy individual or individuals. At first they wondered if it were a crazy person, and so they were asking us if we had seen anyone strange in the area while they were away. They came back later in the day to let us know that the police were convinced that it was some kind of an animal break-in, although they weren't sure exactly what kind of animal yet. The initial presumption was bear, so we were all warned to take precautions with our food and prepare for bear attacks. Now, even though we lived by the woods, we had always gotten by somehow with these old metallic, old-school antique garbage cans. They weren't bear-proof, and although the lids did lock on, that didn't stop the raccoons from loudly attempting to crack them open at night. They had taken a beating over the decades, but they were still in service the night we got that warning from our neighbor. That would prove to be their last night of service, however. That night we heard a racket coming from the garbage area, and so Mav went out there with some bear spray to see what was going on. What he saw was not one large bear, but 3 or 4 small, tiny little doggy-looking fellows, ripping into our garbage and eating what was inside. When they saw Mav, they charged him, somehow managed to trip him, and then they started nipping him all over. At first Mav said it felt like they were playing, but soon the little nips at his arms and legs turned into ferocious attempts at turning my husband into a midnight snack. He barely got the door shut behind himself when the little dogmen all slammed into it, trying to break through and get inside our house. Yeah, these were dogmen. Just like the Anubis dogmen, but younger, wilder. The Anubis had never attacked us, but I saw those little critters try to eat Mav. They were far more aggressive than the prior generation, and there were 3 of them to deal with. I remember watching them outside our front door, manically trying to break into our home, and yet looking incredibly cute the entire time. I remember telling Mav that I'd rather be eaten by an ugly monster than by a cute one. I just don't want to have lived my entire life, only to die by the hand of cuteness. I love cute things. It would be dreadful to be hated by them in return. Nevertheless, all joking aside, I nearly did get myself into serious trouble with those baby dogmen one night. I had found a parking spot by my elderly friend's place and parked my car there, because I was going to be driving her to an event later that night. She only lived about a block from my home, and I was walking the rest of the way, when suddenly I found myself getting swarmed by those baby dogmen. If you've ever lived with puppies, you know how fast and crazy they can be. Well, these were wilder and more dangerous versions of puppies, and I still had to get about 90 feet before I was at my front door. I sped up, and they did too. At this point, they began nipping at my heels. I was wearing jeans and boots, so I wasn't hurt by this initially, but I remembered what Mav had told me. They nipped him at first, but they attempted to bite out chunks of him after that, and I began running toward the nightlight in the front of our house. When I got in the range of the light, the dogman held back, and I managed to get inside safely. We all remained on high alert for years after that, and we kept seeing the scavenger monsters for a little while, or at least some of our neighbors did. Whenever it was that they put in the Great Lakes crossing outlets in Auburn Hills, Michigan, we stopped seeing the creatures. I'm not really sure if the one has anything to do with the other, but it was a fairly big construction project. It happened pretty close to our neighborhood, and it opened a little after we saw the last of the little dogman. So maybe they built that shopping mall on the dogman's home, or on his hunting ground or something like that. My guess is that the little guys took off for some more rural part of the state to be grown-up dogman in. I think most of us assumed they moved on. I think if anyone had captured or killed one, we'd have heard about it, so they must have just moved on. I have heard stories about dogman since then, but not from our neighborhood. For personal and for greedy reasons, I hope the dogman never come back around here. I've had more than enough of both Dogman and Son of Dogman. Dogman Puppy Stories. Number 1. The Anarchist Baby Dogman Pack. Dear Scary Stories NYC. It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend getaway. My wife and I had set up camp in a remote area of the national park, far from the crowded trails. My wife, who grew up in the city in Baltimore, was thrilled about sleeping in a tent and roasting marshmallows over the fire. As the night settled in, we enjoyed the warmth of the campfire, the crackling wood providing a soothing soundtrack to the quiet night. I was really happy to be the guy who got to take her on her first camping adventure. Neither of us knew exactly how much of an adventure it would turn out to be, thanks to an entire pack of wolf-like little bipedal long-leggedy beasties. Just as we were about to retire for the night, we heard rustling in the bushes. At first my wife and I brushed it off as a deer, or maybe a raccoon, but the noises grew louder and more deliberate, as if something or someone was moving closer. I felt really creeped out, and my wife and I exchanged uneasy glances. Curiosity got the better of us, and we grabbed our flashlights. As our beams of light cut through the darkness, they landed on something that made us freeze. Emerging from the shadows were several small, upright figures, covered in a mix of fur and what looked like downy fuzz. I thought I was seeing gnomes or elves or something, but then I realized that these were some kind of animals. In fact, when I got a better look, I saw they were like baby wolves. But wolves that stood up on their hind legs and walked around. These were dogman creatures. There was nothing else that they could possibly have been. but much smaller than I'd ever heard about. Like puppies, but walking on two legs and using their small, almost human-like paws to explore. The baby monsters move with a playful curiosity, sniffing around our campsite and poking their noses into our food containers, which we scattered them away from over and over again. It was terrifying, and yet sort of funny at the same time in a bizarre way. They were clearly young, with big eyes that seemed almost innocent, yet there was something unsettling about their presence. Like a bunch of cute little baby demons or something like that. They rummaged through our supplies, scattering food and gear as they went. One of them even managed to open a cooler, pulling out packets of food with a surprising dexterity. We were too shocked to react quickly enough, taking our valuables away from them and righting each new thing they wronged with a growing mix of fear and fascination. The creatures were surprisingly quiet, communicating with each other through gestures and low growls. They seemed more interested in exploring and tearing things apart than causing any actual harm, but the potential danger was palpable. We tried to be as calm and quiet as possible while stopping their destruction and undoing what they kept doing, afraid of what might happen if we startled them. After what felt like a year, the Dogman pups suddenly lost interest and ran away at high speed back into the woods. They left behind them a mess of overturned gear and scattered food. One of them seemed to have heard something, and so off they all went, to the scene of their next crime, I suppose. As they disappeared into the darkness, my wife and I hurriedly packed up what we could, and then retreated inside to the safety of our tent. We stayed up all night, listening for any signs of their return, but apparently they were bored with us already. We left the campsite as soon as the sun came up, still shaken by the encounter. We decided not to tell the kids the full story when we got home, just that some animals had raided our camp. But my wife and I knew what we had seen. And what we had seen was the anarchist baby Dogman pack. Number 2. The Feral Canine Garden Raiders. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I'm going to tell you a kind of story that I don't think I've ever heard on your channel, or on any other one for that matter. It's a Dogman story, but it's a suburban one. We do live in Michigan, and I know you have a lot of stories from our state, but we're miles from the woods, and miles from any big cities, too. I don't want to say exactly where this all happened, but I will say that our quiet suburban neighborhood had never seen anything like this before. We sort of prided ourselves on our neat gardens and well-kept lawns, so it was quite the shock when my wife and I woke up one morning to find our garden in shambles. The tomato plants were trampled, the flower beds were dug up, and our prized bird feeder was lying on the ground, its contents scattered everywhere. We both jumped to attention, concerned of what the neighbors would think if they saw what a mess our yard looked like. At first we thought it was the work of raccoons or maybe even a group of mischievous kids, but the damage seemed too expensive, too deliberate. Our curiosity piqued. We sat up at a back window that night, hoping to catch the culprits in the act. But what we saw left us speechless. There, out in our yard, was a group of creatures unlike anything we'd ever seen before. They moved on two legs like humans, but they had the appearance of young dogs, covered in a soft, furry coat. They had large, expressive eyes and small hand-like paws that they used to pry open our garden gate and rummage through our crap. They looked almost cute, like something out of a children's book, but there was something eerie about the way they moved and interacted with each other. Plus their eyes glowed like something out of a science fiction TV show, and you knew that these weren't just normal animals who stood up and, had hands. They were otherworldly, or supernatural or something, somehow. The Dogman pups, as we came to call them, were playful and curious, tearing through the garden like a group of rambunctious toddlers. They pulled up flowers, nibbled on vegetables, and even tried to drink from the bird bath, tipping it over again in the process. It was chaos pure and simple, but there was a strange charm to it as well. They seemed so innocent, yet there was no denying the mess they left behind. As the feral canine creatures continued their nocturnal visits, our neighbors began to notice similar damage in their gardens. It became a sort of neighborhood mystery, with everyone sharing stories of the strange visitors. Some were fascinated, but others were frightened, and no one could quite believe what we were all seeing. The creatures always arrived at night and disappeared before dawn, leaving behind ample evidence of their destructive play. We tried various methods to keep them out. Higher fences, stronger locks, even motion-activated lights, but nothing seemed to deter them. They were clever, finding new ways to get in each time. They seemed to be learning from their experiences, adapting to our attempts to keep them out. It was impressive, and it was unnerving. Our neighbors began installing motion-activated cameras, and they reported back to us that the creatures ceased coming around. We started saving up to get our own, but it turned out not to be necessary. Eventually, the visits became less frequent, and our garden began to recover. But the memory of those strange, cute, and destructive creatures lingers to this day. It's a story we tell and retell, each time with a mix of disbelief and amusement. The Dogman pups have left their mark, not just on our gardens either, but on our sense of what's possible in our quiet little corner of the world. We never did find out where they came from or where they went to, but we both know we will never forget the feral canine garden raiders. Number 3. Dogman in the Schoolyard. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I used to work as a substitute teacher, and for a while I worked full-time at an elementary while one teacher recovered from a serious accident for a couple of months. I was working there when this happened, and I can't imagine a less likely location for something like this to occur. It was just another typical morning at the elementary school, with kids playing in the yard before the bell rang. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter and chatter, a sense of normalcy that would soon take a pretty bizarre turn. I was on playground duty that morning, keeping an eye on the students as they ran around, when something caught my attention at the edge of the woods bordering the school property. At first I thought it was just a group of dogs, but as they came closer, I realized that these weren't ordinary animals. They walked upright, almost like small children, with fur-covered bodies and what looked like small clawed hands. There were 4 of them, young Dogman creatures, though none of us knew what to call them at the time. They moved with an uncanny blend of animal grace and human-like curiosity. The kids noticed them next, and the playground quickly descended into chaos. Some of the children screamed and ran, while others stood frozen in shock or pointed in awe. The Dogman pups, seemingly more curious than scared, began to explore the playground equipment. They climbed the jungle gym with ease, their small hands gripping the bars as they swung themselves around. It was surreal, watching these creatures use the slides and seesaws as if they were made for them. This was the 1970s, and although we did have video cameras like Betamax and VHS, nobody had cell phones yet, and nobody carried cameras with them generally. There were some security cameras on the school grounds, but none on the far end of the outdoor play area where this was going down. I mean, I think they had 5 or 6 cameras total, and that was kind of futuristic in those days for a school in a neighborhood as not rich as this neighborhood was. Or wasn't. Despite the playful demeanor of these weird-looking werewolf children, there was an underlying tension in the air. The creatures, though young and somewhat cute, were still wild animals, and their presence was unsettling. We, the teachers, were at a loss for what to do. There were no protocols for dealing with werewolves. We tried to herd the children away from the creatures, urging them inside. But it was difficult to maintain order amidst the confusion. We got most of the girls inside, but a large percentage of the boys actually wanted to go play with these feral monster babies. The Dogman pups seemed fascinated by the children's reactions too. I was stunned to see them mimicking the movements of the boys and girls, and even making whining canine sounds that almost resembled laughter. It was as if they were trying to communicate or at least understand what was happening. Or maybe they were just making fun of the humans. But the more they interacted, the more concerned we became. They were starting to get too close. They were starting to behave too unpredictably, and we had no idea what they were capable of. But then, with absolutely no warning, the creatures lost interest in the playground and retreated quickly back into the woods. The remainder of the boys were ushered inside, and the principal suggested we call a lockdown, not knowing if the creatures would return. We spent the rest of the day trying to reassure the students, although we had little reassurance to offer ourselves. In the following days, the incident became the talk of the small community, although some of the versions that got back to me bore little resemblance to the actual truth. In one anecdote I was assured was true, the Dogman babies arrived in a flying saucer, carrying ray guns. Parents were understandably concerned, and there was a lot of speculation about what these creatures were and where they had come from. Some suggested they were a new species. Others thought they might be an elaborate prank. Kids in costumes making us all look foolish. But those of us who had seen them knew that they were real. Although real what? We had no clue. The school installed new fences and fired me so they could afford new security cameras, and from what I heard, the woods became off limits for the students. But even as I got out of teaching and went into a far more lucrative and rewarding career as a roto-rooter man, I knew I would never be able to forget the Dogman in the schoolyard. Story number 4. The Night of the Werewolf Trash Pandemonium. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I seen the Dogman once when I was a young man. Well, actually, I guess I seen a bunch of dogmen, but they were all young like me in them days. Working the night shift at the diner by the highway back in the late 80s usually meant a quiet evening, punctuated only by the occasional late-night customer or the coughing sound of the percolator that kept going on the blink. But this night was different. It started with a loud crash from the alley behind the building. At first we thought it was just a raccoon getting into the trash, but the noises continued, louder and more persistent. And as the newest guy there, I was sent out back to look at whatever was crashing around out there. Me and a brave coworker, this waitress who I later dated for a while, went out back to investigate. I was glad she was there because I was pretty chicken in those days. But that chick wasn't afraid of nothing. She was like Xena Warrior Princess, but with red hair and a slight bit chunky. Well, okay, not chunky, but she still had a little bit of baby fat on her, if I'm recalling correctly. Anyway, me and this cute waitress turned the corner and we froze in our tracks. There, scattered around this dumpster, was not one, but like a whole Goya beanery of small werewolf men. I mean, they stood on 2 legs, moving with an almost human-like agility. But they were covered in fur and had the unmistakable features of young dogs. Dogman pups. Babies of the real original Michigan Dogman. The sight was both mind-blowing in a good way and, also kind of mind-blowing in a bad way. The creatures were busy tearing open garbage bags and pulling out anything that seemed edible. They moved quickly, their hands deftly sorting through the trash. It was clear they were intelligent, each one working efficiently as if they knew exactly what they were looking for. There was something almost comical about the scene. These little beings, with their oversized eyes and curious expressions, rummaging through our leftovers like troublemaker raccoons from outer space on steroids. But despite that they were the size of kids and acted like kids too, There was an undercurrent of danger, like a comedy film and a horror movie both running at the same time in the same theater. These little dog-headed boys were wild animals, and their unexpected arrival had my knees knocking together like someone was playing the maracas or something. Me and this brave chick just stood there trying to process what we were seeing when one of them dog boys looked up and locked eyes with me. For a minute, time seemed to stand still. It was like staring into the eyes of a kid, and yet, at the same time, there was a primal, untamed intelligence there that made my skin crawl. While I was lost in those eyes, I understood that this creature did not consider me its equal. It did not even consider that I might be intelligent too. It was only assessing me for the ability to get away, and if I would be worth chasing down based on what it thought my meat might taste like. Then, for no reason I ever determined, the Dogman pups all quickly scampered off into the shadows, disappearing just as suddenly as they had appeared. We were left standing in the aftermath, the alley littered with the remains of their impromptu feast. As the adrenaline wore off, we did a bit of cleaning and sweeping up, then hurried back inside and locked the doors. The rest of the night was a blur of confusion and disbelief. We debated who would call the authorities, and what would we say? That a group of dog-like creatures had raided our dumpster? It sounded stupid, like something out of a movie. In the end, we're about to keep it to ourselves, unsure if anyone would even believe us. But that fearless chick I later dated got fed up with our cowardice, and she made the call into the cops for us guys. Why didn't I marry that girl? Oh right, I was too chicken to propose to her. Anyway, over the next few days, the story spread among the daytime diner staff, each retelling more interesting than the last one. Some of them thought it was a prank, others believed it was a rare animal sighting. But those of us who had seen the creatures knew there was something more to it. The way they moved, the intelligence in their eyes, it was unsettling. We double-checked the locks on the doors every day after that, and we made sure to dispose of the trash more carefully, hoping that would prevent any future visits. As far as I remember, it did. That night at the diner changed the way I look at the world, and to this day I still haven't stopped thinking about the night of the werewolf trash pandemonium. Our EP today is someone very trusty. Our executive producer is our old friend Rusty. Please join me in thanking the great and powerful Rusty Reyes for his generous donation, which bankrolled the making of this episode and a few others. I am battling my way back from being sick off and on for way longer than I'm used to having to deal with, and these episodes are taking a lot longer to make than they usually do too. But at least I'm back to working, even if not back to my full speed. And for that I have to thank those of you who sent advice or who prayed for me, and I have to thank Rusty Reyes for his generous and life-saving donation of funds. If you would like to become a hero to the channel like Rusty Reyes, or if you would like to find some more humble way to help, then just listen to the words spoken by our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos, or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.